Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us in this webinar, The Experience Economy, COVID, and Beyond. My name is Marcos Terenzio. I'm Vice President of Creative and Strategy at iGotcha Media. And part of what we do at iGotcha is we help brands through strategic consultation to understand how they can better connect emotionally with consumers. In particular, how can digital experience play a factor to help build that brand advocacy and loyalty from consumers? How can the experience really tell a story that's richer and more engaging, that can allow them to connect at a deeper, more emotional level with consumers? And as we know, this pandemic has completely disrupted shopping behavior. It's completely affected the way that brands can connect with consumers, in particular at bricks and mortar locations, primarily because, we just haven't had the ability to go into bricks and mortar. But in this process, what it has done is it has escalated or expedited the rate in which digital transformation is adopted both by consumer and brands. So as we start to analyze how this shopping behavior has shifted and changed over this past year, it forces the question, what will that mean once the pandemic is over? Or once at least it has gotten to a point where consumers are able to shop again the way that they want to shop, to be able to go into physical bricks and mortars, to decide how they want to spend their time and where they're going to devote their dollars and their time that they spend. So I'm very excited today to welcome two guests. The first one, who's our guest speaker, Jim Gilmore, is a celebrated author. He actually wrote the book, The Experience Economy, that has been very influential for me personally, and also in the way that a lot of the talk track has been given in the industry. The term this past year, definitely when it comes to the digital industry, is all about experience. It is all about how experience is going to be that defining factor that allows brands to connect with consumers. And I also want to welcome Mike Della, who is in charge of sales for business solutions at LG Canada, someone that I've had a chance to work with for many years on many exciting projects. So I'm very happy to have you both here today. And I'd love it if you guys can introduce yourselves a lot better than I can. So Jim, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and a little bit about your book and introduce yourself.
All right. Well, who's Jim Gilmore? Who he's spending time with? Well, I'm co-author of The Experience Economy, among other works, and my co-author is Joe Pine, who wrote the book Mass Customization. And I met Joe, and we started a business together because I wrote him a letter. I read his book, Mass Customization, and dashed out a term I was using at the time, and I dashed off like a 3 or 4 sentence letter. He called me. We arranged to get together, and we became collaborators as a result of that. So, I began my career with Procter & Gamble in what would now be called logistics or supply chain management, but then I went into consulting in that same field. And so I really became intrigued with the notion of innovating how work is done, and was coming to the conclusion that most work has been designed for standardized output. And so when I came across Joe Pine's book, Mass Customization, I went, this is a term I was using. He really explained a lot about what I would, in more detail, things that I've simply been beginning to grapple with. And that led to experiences, because Joe, for a long time, was fond of saying, if you customize a good, you automatically turn that good into a service. So similarly, if you customize a service, came to the realization that you automatically turn a service into an experience. So that's how the idea was born. Delighted to be with you. Appreciate your interest in our work, and I look forward to hearing your probing questions that I know you have prepared for me.
So Mike, how about you introduce yourself now as well?
Hi everyone, my name is Mike Della Mora. I'm the Director of Sales for LG's Business Solutions Division. When people think of LG, many think of the consumer side. We've got our TVs, we've got our appliances, we've got our mobile devices. Where we play in is on the business solutions side, or where I'm playing is the business solutions side. And when we're talking about retail and what technologies we can bring, it's really about that visual experience. So some of the technologies that we are bringing and that we are already showcasing and retailers are utilizing are stuff like direct view LED walls, OLED transparent screens, OLED bendable screens, digital signage throughout retail branches, talking about the path to purchase on kiosks and really all the digital devices that bring you to that retail experience. This is the sector that LG, our business solutions division, is playing in.
Thank you, Mike, for introducing yourself. So, Jim, tell us, what is the experience economy?
Oh, the experience economy is what we're in right now, but to back up in terms of how we framed or framed the concept, if you go back 200 years ago, it's widely acknowledged everybody lived and worked on the farm, or most people lived and worked on the farm in the agrarian economy. But we automated that work and shifted to an industrial economy where work was mainly done at the factory, making physical things from the commodities extracted from largely agriculture. But then we shifted in the 1950s, really in North America, it began to shift to a service economy where most people began to work in the service businesses, performing activities for others. And so what we've anticipated or noticed was happening was a shift to experiences that rather than sort of stuff extracted from the environment, commodities, or physical things, goods, or intangible activities, services, that commerce was increasingly charging people to spend time in some place or event, an experience.
Do you want to just talk a little bit about why the need for the book?
You know, what led to writing the book, The Experience Economy? Well, it's a big idea. And actually others recognized it even before we did. As Joe and I started thinking about experiences, at one point, Joe articulated experience are a distinct economic offering. Once we knew that experiences were different in kind than services, as different from services as services are distinguished from goods, we started to think about what differentiated those different economic offerings. Goods are tangible, services are intangible, experiences are memorable. You make a good, you deliver a service, but you stage an experience, thus work as theater. You know, Joe and I actually, our first presentation publicly together was at the now defunct, I think it was the Strategic Thinking Forum. And right after we were done, a gentleman came from the audience, just a beeline, just headed right for us, huffing and puffing. And he turned out he was an editor from Harvard Business Review Press. And so he challenged us, well, first to write an article, which we did, called Welcome to the Experience Economy. And in between that window, we wrote a shorter piece for the Wall Street Journal called How to Profit from Experience. And then, you know, the article led to the book. And, you know, it's a big idea that experience are as distinct from services as services are from goods, that you have to perform work differently. You have to even conceptualize your entire business. It begins with mindset, how you think about your business, how you think about what you offer customers. And so a big idea was worthy of a book, but we labored really hard to make sure every single chapter of the experience economy pushes the thinking along. There tends to be at least one or two major frameworks or tools that can be used to think more richly about experiences. Someone once called us frameworks are us, which I embrace. We're big believers that if you give people new thinking tools, that those who know their business best, more than an outsider like myself, that's the best way to equip people to move towards experiences.
That's really fascinating, Jim. So how would you say the experience economy has changed during COVID?
I think the last year that we've been through is evidence of the fact that we were right about the need for experiences. It's the experience sector that is most adversely effective. People are not spending time at sporting events and music concerts and even a local coffee shop like they once did. And as a result, we have an economic slowdown. There's a direct correlation. As we said from the beginning, goods and services are no longer enough. You have to begin to stage memorable experiences.
Absolutely, yes. So what will the experience economy look like post-pandemic and beyond?
So obviously we've all been affected by this either directly or indirectly. So how do we think about this? Well, you know, what's next? You know, is there a new normal? You know, what's going to emerge? Several things I've been saying as I've thought about this, and people ask this question. First, I'm highly influenced by Peter Drucker, sort of the godfather of modern management theory. And Drucker, in his book, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, talked about how all innovation is really a function of recognizing discontinuities. changes in demographics, changes in technology, changes in attitude, changes in behavior. Well, I think what we're experiencing now is not a discontinuity, but a giant disruption from which multiple discontinuities will emerge. So the thing is to be watchful, to be observing. My most recent book is called Look, how to improve your observational skills. So look at what's going on. Certain behaviors will continue. They'll find new applications once we have some sense of face-to-face experiences restored. Some uses of time are going to be dropped like a hot potato. Tired of this, so there's going to be a mixed bag in terms of that. So I think you have to see what discontinuities emerge. I do believe this, and it's something we wrote about in the new preface to the re-released Experience Economy, which came out in December of 2019, right before all this hit. But one thing in particular that we shared there is still true. We talked about how time is the currency of experiences. That time is what people are consuming when they pay to enter some place or some event. And then we split that time into two types. There's either time well saved or time well spent. Time well saved, again, before COVID hit, people want to spend less and less time with the acquisition of goods and services, but then because they wanted to save time there, but they would spend more time if they felt it was time well spent. I think because of those, people have a realization, or they become more aware of how they're spending their time, right? And now they're reflect to different degrees, but people are reflecting on how do I want to use my time. There's certain time they're spending they don't like. Right? I wish I wasn't spending so much time at home. I wish I wasn't spending so much time. I wish I could spend time here like I used to. So I think there's going to be a greater self-awareness of time, and I think people might have been mindlessly even. I've been reading Marshall McLuhan about almost a sleepwalker's life, that consumers just sort of go through life with a normal routine. So I think this has been a wake-up call for many people. How do you want to spend your time? And I think that's the good news is there's going to be a wealth of opportunity if you recognize that time is the currency of experiences. People are going to start spending that time differently. That's a change that many businesses can take advantage of if they respond to that with offering valuable ways to spend time.
So Jim, how do you think digital experience can play a factor in this experience economy?
The bar is now being raised to make sure the experiential value, the reason to leave the house, right, has to be sufficient to order that. And that's really a new dynamic, right? The same thing has existed with the smartphone, right? If you're not engaging somebody at a certain place at a certain time, with the tap of a screen or a swipe of the screen, people are gone. They're elsewhere. So now we have every business now has these two competitors, the smartphone and stay at home. And the experience is we should be using this time not only to survive, because I know that's a mode a lot of businesses are in, particularly smaller businesses, but use this time to think more richly about, well, what experiences are we going to offer to get people to come back, to spend more time with us in the future.
So Mike, let me ask you now, what is the role of technology in creating immersive experiences?
Technology is there to support and to be that catalyst to relate to the customer. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create more of that emotional attachment from the brand to the customer. And nowadays, everyone walks around with technology on them, whether it's their digital phone, whether it's, a smart watch. The expectation is we are immersed in technology, and we want to, the consumer wants to have that experience when they're relating with their brand, when they're thinking about which brand they're going to choose. And really the role of technology is to, again, be another touch point. It's to have that omni-channel sell, that continuous feel of this is the world that I live in, and I don't want to have a selling experience. Too many brands, they focus on selling in the retail, in a retail setting, and that's really not the way to connect with users anymore. You have to connect on that emotional level. You have to connect on what resonates with today's buyer. And again, by applying technology, it allows us to speak the language of what the buyers are looking for.
How do you think digital signage can be an enabler?
The great thing about digital signage that many brands, many retailers are really starting to figure out is it can't be shut off. And I look no further than my own personal life. And with my kids, we're watching shows on Netflix, or if it is cable, we're recording on a PVR so that we can skip through commercials. On the internet, everyone's using ad blockers. On YouTube, I don't know anyone who sits through the entire advertisement. So brands are starting to realize that although at home or in the home, you do have that direct connection and the analytics behind it, it really isn't an always on advertising method or branding method. And it's becoming less and less effective. On the inverse side, when you look at digital signage, it's always on. You can't shut it off. Except for major blackouts, you can't shut down digital signage. It will be there, and that quick, instant messaging is the mechanism behind digital signage. So you think of that path to purchase, that willingness to commit yourself to that brand in ways that in-house or online advertising simply can't achieve.
How do you think retail brands could adopt this technology?
One frame we had that might be helpful in thinking about that is something I picked up from Larry Keeley way back in the Doblin Group, a design firm. He would talk about experience, the 5 phases of an experience: attracting, entering, during, exiting, and extending. Attract, enter, during, exit, extend. So often we only think about the during experience, but think about all 5 of those as discrete experiences. So take digital signage, right? How can it be used to attract people, right? To even notice that you're there, right? That would be certainly an application. More and more stuff is going to become like New York's Times Square or Las Vegas, the epicenter of the experience economy. You need those visuals to just attract attention. Say, look, we're here. This is a significant spot, and to be creative and how that's used. Then entering. Oh my goodness, entering experiences. How does the screens change when you enter? Which motion sensors, and don't just use the sensors to count traffic, but to use it to trigger real-time events. Of course, during, right? How does it augment and even I would say enhance exiting? Again, someone just purchased something from you at checkout. What happens to affirm a purchase or to trigger something at check, and then extending after the purchase.
That's great. Thank you so much for all of that commentary. It was awesome. So, Mike, are there any really innovative new technologies that you'd highlight that brands should be aware of that could help them in really delivering that experience?
You have 2 technologies that are competing for that premium space, and they play very different roles. You have direct view LED, and you have OLED, organic light emitting diodes. OLED is meant for high impact, close visuals. If you want, the ultimate in flexibility, it really is OLED technology. You have screens that are coming out that are flexible. You can actually bend them in real time on an arm, or you have transparent screens that you can see through. Again, I think back to Minority Report, and the way Tom Cruise is shifting through his data on his large screen. That technology is now available.
So, Mike, how do you think transparent technology or other innovations can help elevate the brand experience?
Transparent technology allows you to have that messaging, again, without impeding that view inside. So it actually can reduce the amount of physical space needed at the front of the store and allows more of an open feel. So that technology, what we have, the LG transparent LED film, which, Marcos, we've just actually done a great installation together in Vancouver. Technology film where you can actually layer it down on the front of glass. So you don't need any extra investment. You don't need additional hardware. You don't need structural support. It's literally a film that peels onto a piece of glass and allows you to almost instantly start branding on that glass. Historically or traditionally, that the glass at the front of the store has been a necessity, but not really a branding opportunity. It's really one or the other. Can we stick a poster on it, or do we want to have the sightlines in? And this transparent LED film allows that clean, fluid interaction between the physical space and the digital space while not impeding sightlines in and out of the store.
Yeah, it was great actually working on that project with LG. You guys were so helpful in getting it both sourced and procured and installed. And I mean, the results are really beautiful. We're very happy with it, and so is the client. So, Mike, I'm a little bit of a sci-fi geek, I must admit, and there's something I've been meaning to ask you. The transparent OLED technology, is that something that's currently being used on Star Trek Discovery by any chance?
Yeah, Marcos, it's great that you bring up the movie sets. And I guess to straight up answer your question, the answer is yes. On Star Trek Discovery, it is filmed in Canada, and it is using our transparent OLED technology. So you talk about real life applications where it can resonate. You see that when you're watching TV, and you realize that it's no longer an after effect for the show. This is shot on real technology. And it's not only transparent OLED that's making its way into Hollywood. Green screens are going away, whether you're talking, news channels, broadcast, or even in actual film settings. The green screen is going away, being replaced by very fine, very high resolution micro LED product. And when we talk about direct view LED, this is really where the future is going on this micro LED, high contrast, high resolution product. Hollywood's adopting it. Hollywood is moving away from the way they've traditionally worked. They're embracing technology and using it to better their sets, better the experience for the viewer.
So, Jim, what do brands need to do to stay relevant?
A brand is the promise of an experience. And in response to that, we wrote, amen, we love that. But so often, the actual experience fails to fulfill against the promise. True then, especially true today. If you want to build your brand, it's through experiences. It's not some exercise done in a boardroom saying, if our brand was a tree, what kind of tree would it be? You have to offer time. Brand is earned. Brand is earned by the time people spend with you. So I think and marketers understood this experiential marketing. We were seeing more event-based demand creation events, whether it's Vans Warped Tour to Red Bull downhill ice skating, whatever it might be. We saw that inventiveness taking place, and that's how it has to happen. We have to brands will be strengthened to the extent to which they can get people to spend time. Less time with advertising, right? That's for sure. We wrote about that in our book, Authenticity, which might be why I didn't do quite as well. I don't think the ad agencies like that book a great deal. But you have to design experiences, and better agencies understood that 360 marketing, the work that you do, and understanding that you have to have events to build that brand.
So, Jim, knowing that all of this disruption has happened, how can brands win back their customers?
The customer owns the brand, right? It's who actually buys your offerings. They determine what your brand is. So I think the way to get there is to stage events that attract the people you'd like to attract. Because in this age of social media, that word of mouth and that talking about and posting about the experiences you enjoy, that there's no better way to build a brand than to get your customers being your best advocates out there, which is, again, the whole digital realm is just saturated with that activity.
Jim, in your book, you talk a lot about the importance of authenticity. How important do you think it is for brands to be transparent with their customers and have that authenticity in a post-pandemic world?
be careful what you say about yourself, which is always a temptation in marketing, is to be boastful about we are this, we did this, because nothing can raise doubts about a brand if you aren't who you say you are, and if you're not true to yourself, if we sort of quote Polonius. So I think there's some soul searching that needs to take place. Both if you take that Polonius construct of be true to yourself and be who you say you are, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night today, thou cannot be then false to any man, right? Don't be false to anyone. It's to really state your identity. Who are you? I think there's going to be a lot more. Here's our origins. Here's our story. Here's what we've been through. That origins and history is going to be vitally important, even recent history of what you've been through. And then, make sure you identify your statements. What have you been saying about yourself that may no longer be valid, or perhaps was never true about oneself, but you were getting away with it? And I think those companies who actually have taken action. I think of a local restaurant chain where I live, maybe 10 restaurants in the area. But early on, they had all this toilet paper, in their storage rooms, and nobody was coming to the restaurant. And they were like, "Hey, call with a pickup order, and we'll give you a 4-pack of toilet paper when you swing by." Those kinds of giving gestures. I think if they were genuinely performed, and I trust they wouldn't have been if they weren't. Those are things you can draw from and keep some of those efforts going. Don't just care about your neighbor in tough times, but we're all human beings. We're not just running a business, and to a business does care about human beings. It's meeting human needs, and if you rose up to help in these times, I think that'll work in your favor. If you didn't, I think that's going to be hard to overcome. So again, the key is there's new needs, there's new opportunities. Again, this is back to Drucker. To the extent to which life has changed, there is opportunities to do things differently. So every business can ask themselves, what new behaviors that are emerging for the customers we already have or have had that we have the capability to respond to, but also what things are we capable of that perhaps we ought to be taking to new customers, whether that's geographically, right, or just in offerings that augment the things you've done, particularly goods companies shifting to services and services companies shifting to experiences. That's the logical move. If you're a physical good manufacturer, what services now are required because of changed behavior? If you're a service company, what new experiences are there opportunities to have? Somebody's going to reinvent a more efficient curbside pickup. Somebody's going to think about how to use parking lots more efficiently if there's not cars parked in. That's retail space to be done differently. But again, you have to observe what's happening in the landscape to understand where those opportunities reside.
The best brands these days aren't looking at selling to their consumers or selling to their potential customers. They're looking at creating that experience with relating with them. I'll steal the LG tagline, life's good. They're looking at creating life's good moments, ways to enjoy associating with the brand. And then it becomes a part of their everyday life, being in that ecosystem of the brand where you don't have to sell to them. They want to be part of it. So when I look at digital technology, it really is that enabler to relate, to talk to have fun, to coexist with the customers that you're trying to win over.
One thing we haven't talked about that I would say is perhaps the most powerful neglected idea in the book is the notion of customer sacrifice. Is not just to satisfy, not just to have customer satisfaction being the difference between what customers expect and what they perceive they get, right? You want to meet expectations. That's what satisfaction is all about. But our notion of customer sacrifice is the difference between what people settle for and what they want exactly, right? It's the gap between what a customer settles for versus what they want exactly. They sacrifice. And I think that's an opportunity that I would point people to in the book. And I think the number one sacrifice that retail and many organizations have had is wasting people's time. It's not time well spent. So stop wasting people's time. Save them time on things that have not been fruitful, whether that's wayfinding or assistance in retail, and then have the time well spent. I think that's the key. That's the key battle line that is there, right? Save people time, and then have them spend time in ways that they value. As we say, time is the currency of experiences, and I wish everyone well in enriching the time that people spend. Lord knows we need it. I am so tired of all this screen time. I can't wait to go shop.
So thank you very much, everyone. This brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. Jim, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure. Feel free to reach out to myself or Mike or Jim. We're sharing our contact information below in the details of this webinar. And, we're hoping that we can provide some assistance to all of you to really help engage consumers in this post-pandemic era and really help drive experience to that next level. Thank you, everyone.